Welcome to the Chris Spangle Show. Thanks so much. This is a bit of an update. I want to start with setting the table, okay? I disappeared for a couple of months, and it's because we had a baby. I want to just kind of share what's been going on and where we're at. I have a studio in Fountain Square in Indianapolis that I use for clients. So I feel like I need to give you an update. I've kind of disappeared this summer, and I apologize. We had a baby, and between the baby, the new job, clients, life, getting our new rhythms down, it was just crushing in terms of our schedule. But I'm feeling good about things now, and I have been working for months on this Foundation of Liberty episodes and kind of rethinking about what we're going to do here on the show. And so I am so in my head about doing this that I have defaulted to the Young Voices interviews just to get content out, because I'm not really saying what I think at this point, and I'll try to explain the psychology. So this show is like 13, 14 years old, started in 2012. So yeah, 13 years. And, in the early years, especially with a group of friends, it's like YOLO, just say whatever. I had nothing on the line. I look back through my 20s and 30s, a lot of regrets, a lot of bad decisions. And I think about my great grandfather, dads. And dads, I knew him in his 80s and 90s. I was very fortunate to know my great grandparents. They grew up in a world that is so unbelievably different than mine. Dads grew up in Vincennes, Indiana, on the same mile square for like 95 years. And he started at one end of the road and then died at the other end of the road. And he never talked. We would go down there a few times a year to see them. And I mean, he would just mumble. He'd just murmur. Yeah. He'd never go to dinner with us. He didn't really talk or open up. And I don't know that that's the best thing. But, and then he got diagnosed with Alzheimer's in the mid-90s, and that's when he really started to talk all the time. It's kind of surprising. And I found out that he was like the pastor of his local little community church and all kinds of interesting things about him. But as I get older, I realize he didn't want to open his mouth and sound like an idiot. And the more I learn, the more I feel like an idiot when I talk about things I don't understand. But that has kind of led me over the last couple years to talk less, to the detriment of this program, which is my passion. And I feel like I've undergone so many different intellectual changes since the pandemic. I would say that I am still libertarian. I still believe in the ideas. I am less confident in the people. And I am going deeper in my faith. And I was really encouraged in the last episode that I put out, my conversation with Jacob Wingerad. I'm sorry if that's not how you say your name, Jacob. Probably to be respectful, learn his name. I open up the newspaper now with disgust. It was such a fun hobby to get together with friends and talk about politics and libertarian politics when it was so theoretical. And I feel like we're in such a time now where things are not as theoretical as they once were. In 2009 at meetups, we would, we can debate mandatory vaccines. That'll never happen. And then that happens. We can debate the power of the presidency and creeping executive power and what if authoritarianism comes to America. Well, it's looking pretty rough. I'm different than a lot of other podcasters in this genre in that they're so sure. And I don't know how people can be so sure, because I'm like, what if everybody's right? I've got to incorporate that more into this and incorporate more conversations. I've also kind of just fallen out of love with just applying libertarian principles to the current events thing. I'm more interested in how do we prepare ourselves for a completely different way of life. I think AI is going to completely change how we live. Watching this Joanna Gaines, Chip Gaines Pioneer show right on the back of watching Gilded Age, you watch these two generations, you see the pioneers and how they have no modern conveniences, but they have deep relationships with their neighbors. And I know it's reality TV, it's concocted, but knowing enough history, that's how it actually worked. Just finished David McCullough's Pioneers book, to the Gilded Age, where their entertainment is gathering together and talking. My great-grandfather that I was just talking about, they would have regular dinners with their neighbors and they'd help each other, and it wasn't nearly as isolated as I think we are now. We are killing ourselves with entertainment and distractions. We have no room for silence in our day and age, and we are facing a literal earth-changing technology that is going to give us everything that we want, at least what we think we want. When you ask ChatGPT a question, it tells you what you think you want. And I think we've seen with social media, that's incredibly dangerous. It's not real community. It's not real relationships. It's just like eating candy every day intellectually. So while I use ChatGPT and I'm on social media, I don't have the same desire to go and be an influencer and build a big podcast brand like I did back in the day. I have a great job. I work at a local newspaper. The opinions expressed here are not those of theirs. I'm in management, and I'm a media executive, I guess. And I've talked a lot here about the development of my exposure to the local establishment and how that's changed a lot of things for me, along with the pat down. I'm just in a very confused time intellectually. You are so sure of your beliefs, and then all of a sudden you're not sure of those beliefs at all. And so where do you fit? Where do you land? So I've been working all that out, trying to think all that through, and not in public. But I feel like I need to do some of that in public because of the response to this last podcast. I got so many notes from so many of you saying, man, I feel the same way. And I want to show my work a little bit. That's the gift of this audience. There's hundreds of you that still listen. And we'll grow again, I think, if I open up and I'm a little more honest about what I'm thinking about. It's not fear necessarily. It's when you put yourself on record in public, people have a long memory. And so if you are debating with yourself a view of something, then people they only hear 15% of what you say on a podcast. They don't listen closely and deeply. And so it's kind of best, if you're thinking through some of these issues, to do it speak when you're sure. I didn't always do that. I don't know how much I love that, having all that on the record. I'm not ashamed of any, I am ashamed of some things that I've done through the course of these podcasts, but what am I trying to say? How do I put it? I just think there are so many people like me who are caught in the middle, who are maybe a little politically disillusioned, where you start so sure as a libertarian, a conservative, a Democrat, a progressive, whatever, and that surety clashes with age as you grow in wisdom and knowledge, as your social circles grow, as you get to know people. I think having doubts about political ideologies and how that all works is totally normal, but it's completely antithetical to how to grow a brand. I know how to grow a brand. I know how to do digital media. I have done it professionally for 20 years. I've done talk radio for 20 years. So I want to explore some of that. And this is kind of a pilot episode for some of that, just to set the table a little bit. In addition to bringing back Harry and Reinhold, they're going to be here once a month. We're able to kind of schedule that in and do that. In addition to some of the Young Voices interviews, I've really found it insightful talking to some of these immigrants, that are offered up as guests. And I also want to take a closer look at my local community. There's so many people doing interesting work here in the local community to solve problems. And then I want to do these monologues and explore faith and politics and the news and fatherhood and a lot of different things. I don't have a lot of that worked out. I've got some roadmap for that. But I'm going to start with something I'm calling the foundations of liberty. It goes back to the conversation before the election around this time last year with Harry, that we don't have a really good handle on what we actually believe anymore. I feel like when you're faced with rapid change, both socially, technologically, politically, you get swept up in that motion of it all. And you've got to really like drill down on what you believe. And so I think for me, you know, there's a Christian term for it's called deconstruction, where you take out all of your beliefs, put them on the table, examine them, and rebuild what you actually believe. And I think some of it's kind of BS, but I think that's politically important, right? So I want to. I don't believe like libertarianism is what I think it is and what I say it is, or what some other podcaster thinks and says it is, or what some think tank says it is. I think libertarianism is a consistent philosophy by which you measure your own beliefs and by which you measure current events. And so I want to work through some of that, right? I'm starting with where I have been, which is these foundational beliefs of liberty. We're going to record the first episode. This is kind of the test to see if the camera looks good, if it sounds good, if the flow is good. I'd love your feedback. But we're going to work through like what are the basics of a functional society? What are the basics of libertarianism? What are the basics of a functional society? We're going to try to largely ignore what is happening through this series and make it a little bit of evergreen. I think that the ideas of liberty are not getting their fair shake right now. I think they're getting so muddied with current events, and every think tank and brand and podcaster is trying to chase after clicks and downloads that they're losing them. We're losing the message. So let's just get back to like a pure discussion of what is the philosophy, what are libertarian beliefs, where do I agree and disagree with these beliefs. Just lay it on the table, let you hear it, see what you think. Maybe you'll hear the ideas of something like open borders and hear the arguments for that, and you and I will not agree with them. Okay? Or we will negotiate with those libertarian beliefs to see where we fall. And then from there, figure out how to put that together to talk about that. I certainly am the other direction from Donald Trump. I think we really have to question when you have ICE, when you give ICE a budget larger than the Marines, where does that end? You're saying student loans are forgiven if you're an ICE agent. Teenagers, you can become an ICE agent. Where does that end? Are you militarizing a branch of the executive branch? There's so much about right now that I think we have to go back to that foundation, especially in the year 250 of the Declaration. What did we believe? And what can we apply moving forward? But we need to reconnect with the foundational principles of the American founding. Well, just stick with me, okay? And I'd love your feedback. I'd love to hear from you as we work through that. The second piece is formation. I love being a dad. I love being married to my wife, Reagan. It has robbed this show more than any other aspect of my life because I love going home at 5:00 and being with my kids for 3 hours. It's just like you come home, and I never thought I'd have kids. I didn't really think I'd be remarried even before I met my now wife in 2019. But you come home and there's just like a party for you when you get there, and like having a kid is like watching a little fire. They're just always doing something interesting. But I want to drill down into some of these larger questions of what I'm working through, which is, what's the point of a family? The point of a family is to transmit values to the next generation. And I have largely been immature and flippant for most of my life. And now I am faced with the problem of training up 3 little kids, my stepdaughter and my son and my 7-week-old daughter, and transmitting to them values. But it's really hard to do that if you don't have values, if you haven't thought about what you believe. And so that's the journey that I've kind of been on, right? So, what is the foundation of a healthy society? And what is the formation of a healthy individual? And it feels scary and vulnerable to kind of come to the table here and say that's the direction that I want to go and have these conversations out loud and get back to giving you a peek into my life. When the last time I opened up to my audience here was a lot of peeking into my life that wasn't healthy, like the privacy. But I feel called to continue to do this show. I debate and have debated for a long time, like, do I want to walk away? It'd just be easier to turn off the Patreon, turn off the feed, just say, hey, thanks so much for being here. But I feel like the hundreds of you that are still tuning into this show, knowing that I have been giving it 25% of my best effort, which I am sorry for, I feel like you're owed, like I'm supposed to be here. That of all the things that I do, this is one of the most important. I have been given the skill set and this audience to share with you the knowledge that I'm being given, the wisdom that is being given to me by God. I mean, there's no reason on earth that Chris Spangle should have the family that he dreamed about. My parents got divorced when I was 15, and I have great parents. And believe me, I have a lot of grace for them after I went through my own divorce in 2014 and went through 8 years of really bad decision making and loneliness and grief that I might never have. Like, my happiest memory as a kid is 8, 9, 10, laying in front of the fire with the Christmas tree up, watching a Christmas movie with my mom or dad scratching the back of my head, and just that safety and comfort of having your family with you. I never thought I would have that, and I do now. And it's the most important thing in my life to make sure that my kids have that great memory too. And does speaking out on a podcast that is somewhat self-aggrandizing risk that? Does it risk the income that you make at your job? Does it risk alienating friends? Like, it's a lot easier just to not do this anymore. But there's no reason that I should have the jobs that I have. There's no reason that God gave me by 40, every opportunity I ever dreamed about as a kid. My own radio show, which is this. Work as a professional comedian with the Pat Down and BET. There's no reason I should be on BET. The ability to make a meaningful impact in my community with groups like Citizen 7 and my day jobs. I've been taken to the mountaintop of what I wanted to do as a kid, and I got to peek over and see, if you want that, you have to do things that take away from your family. Like, if I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, I probably could have had the opportunity, but that would have meant weekends and weeknights away from my family. And I didn't want to do that. The opportunity with BET and Miss Pat on Miss Pat Settles It, I could have hired an agent and tried to get on more shows or develop some sort of career, but it would have taken me away from there, right? And so, as I kind of put everything on the table and say, like, what's really important, because time is such a limited strategic resource, what's important? And this just keeps coming back, this podcast, and sharing with you some of these things that I'm doing. These two veins, right? Foundational principles the foundation of a healthy society and the formation of a healthy individual. I feel wholly and completely inadequate in talking about either of those, but I think that's part of it, right? Like when we talk about physical health, I am clearly not the man to be giving you advice on physical health. But I am maybe the person to kind of open up and show you some of these struggles, because one of the beautiful things about doing these podcasts is over the years, over the last 13 years, as I have shared with you the things I'm struggling with, you have written in and said, man, nobody's talking about that. And I was struggling with that too. So I just am comfortable in some ways in talking about some of this stuff in public. My wife is comfortable with me talking about some of these things in public. And I just feel like I need to keep doing this and keep being there. But it's going to be awkward in the beginning as I get my rhythms down and my skill set back. I think in so many ways I have atrophied from how to do this show properly, how to do a good interview, how to host a little round table with friends, and how to be entertaining. But I've got to push into it and just show up. And if the show sucks that week, it sucks. If it's good, it's good. But continue to do this and just have hope that whatever I do and say, you find beneficial, that you find helpful in your life, and that whatever consequences come, there's something better on the other side because I'm being faithful in doing this. So I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear, hey, I want to hear about this. I want to hear about this principle. I want you to cover this topic that is a housing, immigration. If there are personal things where you're like, I just can't get this thing in my right, I'll find somebody to come and have a discussion. I want this to be two-way. I want to get back to where this was a great conversation amongst friends. So I'm going to get started. This is the first one. And I just said, you're doing it this week. You have no roadmap. You're not prepared. You've thought about it for a few months, but you still haven't sat down and done it. But willpower is on the table. Okay, not the race car driver. I love to be lazy. I love to be comfortable. I love to not push myself. And I have to just build those rhythms into my life to fight that. So we're going to be here. And we look forward to having you join us. And the email is chris@chrisspangle.com. And thank you so much. And especially if you're a patron, if you've hung with us, we've had a few drop off the last couple of months. I probably should have said, hey, I'm taking a month break to deal with this child. And so my apologies for not being open about that. But yeah, here we are. And so let's get started. We're going to start with, like I said, the plan is Harry and Reinhold in the round table. We are libertarian style. Some of the interviews with some of those young voices folks about topical things, more personal episodes like this, thinking through issues, and then the Foundations of Liberty episodes. So stay tuned. Thanks for being with us, and we really look forward to talking with you more.